I want to welcome you all to the Blue Incubator today. We have two distinguished speakers with us today, and we are talking about women in blue tech. I'm going to make a brief introduction and then ask them to talk a little bit about their work. And then we're going to dive into some questions and discussion. So, we have Donna Lanzetta. She is the CEO from Manna Fish Farms. It is the in the eastern U.S. will be the first offshore fish farm that's been permitted, which is a huge hurdle. And congratulations, Donna, for how far you've come so far. It's amazing. And then our other distinguished guest is Liane Thompson. She's the CEO of Aquaai. And Aquaai is a fish as a service company. They have an amazing tracker, let's say, an autonomous underwater fish that can take all kinds of sensors and measurements and create a healthy atmosphere or give out signals if there's an unhealthy atmosphere. So Donna, would you start us off? And I love your background, by the way. And
sure, Judith.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your company, how you started, how you came to be in this particular blue tech sector.
Thank you, Judith. It'd be my pleasure. And may I ask how many minutes would you like me to consume? Because how I can determine how far back I should go.
Yeah.
Did you
Actually,
say 15?
You know what? First, I apologize. We'll just quickly go around the room and have the startups introduce themselves. I didn't look at my agenda here. Okay. Let's see. We will start off with Peter from BioVert Protein. Peter, can you give us an introduction about you and your company, please?
Yes, hello. I'm Peter Hamilton, founder and CEO of BioVert Protein, based in Thailand. We've designed out the waste and wastewater using a biovertical unlock, where two keys combine close the loop on recycled nutrients. The first key uses ultrafine bubbles to open removal of organic solids and provide clean water for reuse. And the second key uses insects to unlock nutrients in the removed solids for upcycling into living fuel. That's a short summary of BioVert Protein in Thailand. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Peter. Next up, we have Anne Ruddy from Red Rose Developments.
Hi, yes. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm located in Northwest Ireland. We've got two systems. We're all about seaweed. And our first system is turning fishes into ocean farmers using a towable, seeded, floating farm. It can be towed to a designated offshore location where the seaweed is grown out and then alerted to the fishes to tow it back in. But everybody has experienced, I'm sure, how seaweed is smelly. It's on the beach, usually covered in flies. That's because it's so bioactive, it actually starts to eat itself. However, we have a cunning plan, and our cunning plan is to actually process on the shore in very small containers. So we are totally sustainable. We only take as much as the ocean can replenish. We process it and we valorize it, creating nutrient-rich liquid and solid outputs. And we know that we're already capturing bioactives that haven't previously been recorded. And we know that the compounds in the seaweed through this early stage intervention is actually able to be valorized in food, feed, fertilizer, and so much more. So all about seaweed.
Great. Thank you, Anne. And from the north, we have Christine from eOceans.
Hello, I'm Christine. I'm the founder and CEO of eOceans. I'm a marine scientist by training. After leading many global projects on sharks and rays and marine protected areas and so on, found that it was too slow to ever keep pace with ocean change. And there was so much data, but there's too few people to ever analyze the data. So building eOceans is a platform that automates the analytics and the expertise of quantitative ecologists so we can have real-time insights to make informed decisions about the ocean spaces. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Christine. Okay. So Donna, do you want to take 10 to 20 minutes?
My
Give you
pleasure.
A little leeway.
Great. So hello, I see some familiar faces. I guess, Anne, this is what you have to do to get on a line with me. We've been meaning to talk, but thank you, Judith, for inviting me to speak about Manna, the Manna companies. And I'm anxious to update you all and tell you what's been happening in the world of Manna. So founded the company way back in 2013. And Judith, it sounded great to hear you say that I had permits, but what I do have is a completed application for offshore aquaculture to be permitted. The day I have permits in my hand, you'll all be able to hear me screaming and probably the earth shaking with dancing of joy. So it's been a labor of necessity for our environment and for our world to produce protein in the face of climate change and think about seafood as the most efficient protein to feed our planet. You know, we have the greatest challenge of our lifetimes, my lifetimes of our world, I think, is to meet this challenge of protein production. We're going to have 9 billion people on Earth, and there's just no more not enough space on the land to produce enough for us. So Manna Fish Farm started to pursue offshore aquaculture. We feel that when we think about sustainability and balance and being able to produce protein without depleting our natural resources, that the ocean has the greatest potential to meet these challenges. We can farm in the ocean where the waters are swift without tainting the environment. If we have the right balance, we can have healthy fish without chemicals or treatments. We can introduce organic feeds and nothing inorganic into the area. And this is our plan and goal. Early on, we realized that in order to get out there in federal water and farm, we would need to be, well, sustainable, of course, but transparent and be able to earn our social license and build trust in industry so it can be developed. We have no federal water commercial fin fish farms in the United States. And my journey really started traveling around the world and visiting those farms and learning from those farmers. And as a background in law, studying the legal framework for permitting here in the United States and trying to understand why it wasn't happening. And I do understand now. It's almost impossible, right? Without a path for permitting, a clear path, it's impossible to raise finance because you can't even do a projection to say when you're going to have revenue. So it's hard enough to raise funds without revenue, but without a timeline towards revenue is even more difficult. So Manna undertook the journey, and we believe that it's a circular business plan that's going to get us to where we need to be, not just the offshore aquaculture. It's going to take all of the Manna companies working together. And I think with this plan in mind, we have a timeline, and it's a little fluid, but right now we believe that our first offshore farm will be permitted down in Florida. It was the second one we began looking at, but it's going to be the first one, I believe, to be permitted. It's a site 23 miles off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. We plan to use the storm-safe submersible net pens when we start talking about BlueTech. It's these submersible net pens that make farming in the ocean possible because you need to get underneath all that storm activity. And then, so just to back up, Our first permit was for New York, and we're pursuing a site that's 9 miles off of Eastern Long Island in New York. Then we started Florida. Florida got ahead. Our third one is a site we're just starting to pursue in Puerto Rico. It's a co-location site with renewable energy and aquaculture, really just to study from what we've learned from our other sites in marine spatial planning, whether it's feasible to have renewable energy and aquaculture in the same site. You know, can we actually meet the parameters of criteria that we need for the site for both uses? So we're working on that now. We'll let you know. But then the fourth site we would be working on is our Canadian site. I've recruited a COO from Canada. His name is Mike Meeker. He's the engineer who designed the storm safe submersible net pen. So again, it's this whole circular thing. And also he has permits in Canada. He's been farming for 37 years, rainbow trout. He was the first organic certified farmer in North America. So wrapping Mike's operations in with ours and him coming in to run our offshore operations has been a perfect fit. And not only does he bring all the experience, he brings the equipment. We've then started, and the organic standards, which he was instrumental in Canada in helping to establish those. So again, the circle fills in. And with these four sites, we studied, Mike already had his sites, but with the new sites, we look at, you know, marine spatial planning, because siting is so important for the offshore farms. In New York and Florida, we spent 18 months with National Center for Coastal Ocean Science doing that planning work and using these new tools like ocean reports and mapping tools and data layers to look at the ocean uses and species, protected species, habitats, and determine what's the best possible site in our areas for offshore farming. So that's has been a great learning experience. And it's these great tools that have been developing at the same time that we've been moving forward that are enabling us to be confident that our preferred sites are in fact the least impactful sites out in the ocean, and the parameters of those sites are setting us up for success. So we've done that. We now committing to 100% transparency. It becomes an issue now to think about how we're going to monitor those sites, how we're going to transmit the data from offshore through satellite into to the public. People could log on and watch through a live stream video. Is that economically feasible? In the beginning, 5 years ago, it wasn't, but the costs have come down, and it is feasible now. So I think we're looking to live stream our farms. Our goal is really pushing back on the misconceptions surrounding farmed fish. You know, that it's polluting, that it's destroying, that's harming the environment. Through all of our transparency and tracking and modeling, we can prove scientifically that we're not, our goal is to prove that we're not harming the environment. In fact, we're not overstocking our fish. We're not using chemicals or treatments. We're not choking out the benthic life underneath the farm. So we set up to do that now through more tech tools like the modeling work that that NOAA is doing for us now, to deposition modeling in Florida to look to see where the waste is going to fall based on the parameters of the site, and where we should place our sensors so we can monitor those things accurately. So this is not just running out into the ocean and drop it in equipment, right? It's definitely a process. And all along, we've been planning, researching, doing our business development, and building our team, because it's really all about the people who are going to be implementing these plans. So as we move from Manna Fish Farms, we have started another company, Manna Systems. Manna Systems is involved in manufacturing equipment to support aquaculture. We're specifically looking at the storm safe net pens that we would be making. How can we make them better? How, we're going to be implementing improvements as time goes on. How can we integrate the sensing and monitoring that we want to do in the open ocean with this equipment? We're also looking at the Aquafort equipment to manufacture that and also integrate some improvements to it. Right now, we're working to make it submersible, which it is not now. It's a surface piece. It's a IMTA piece of equipment. If you're not familiar with the Aquafort, it has two squares in the middle for finfish and then a platform all around the outside for seaweed and shellfish. So it's that piece of equipment that we're looking to use in Puerto Rico with the wave energy. So with that, we rolled right into, we have to have a nonprofit organization to support our education programs, our training programs, and also to be the one, we believe, to do the organic certification for U.S. seafood on a non-for-profit basis. So we set up the Manna Ocean Foundation. It's a 501c3, and that's exactly what that nonprofit is going to do. We have planned training programs for military veterans to teach them how to do oyster farming, workforce training for offshore aquaculture, and we've been inviting children in to our presentations at our next company, which is Manna Restaurant. Didn't really plan on a restaurant, but back in 2018, my town supervisor approached me and said, "Hey, Donna, are you still looking for somewhere to grow your baby fish?" I said, yeah. He said, "Well, meet me over at this restaurant." It had been a seafood restaurant for 75 years, was about to leave to become a townhouse development. And he said, "You could buy the restaurant, the town will buy the marina, you buy the land across the street, and the town will buy the development rights." So this was the first time our community preservation fund was used for aquaculture. And now we're sitting on 5 acres of land where we're going to build an aquaculture innovation center across from the restaurant. So again, the circle turns, right? We renovated and opened up the restaurant in 2020. We just finished our second year. It's a hot new seafood restaurant on the water in the Hamptons, and it's been wonderful as a platform for conversations about sustainable seafood. So as that restaurant has come forward, we do programs Monday nights to Manna Mondays and bring in guest speakers. Judith, I hope you'll come sometime. Anne's been there. Liane, I hope that everybody, Robert Jones from the Nature Conservancy came and talked about seaweed culture around the world and the work of TNC. We have some interesting guests lined up for next year, but so that's how the restaurant kind of fits in and supports. And what the restaurant does now is not only a platform for sustainable seafood, but it will also be a showcase for our next company, which is Manna Seafood Blockchain. And what we've done is when we're faced with 46% of seafood being mislabeled and fraud and really the inefficiencies of the seafood supply chain, we were compelled to move forward and we convened our network for blockchain for seafood with IBM. And so to have a great partner like IBM to support us in this effort. And we are launching that in March. I have a waiting list of products waiting to come onto the blockchain. And what that means is the products will be, we want to help reduce seafood fraud, right? So we verify where it's from and whether it's through our species authentication tools or other certification programs that we can link in with to make sure that that's not an IUU product. It's really the imports that have the highest fraud rate. It can sometimes go up to 75%, where they're switched into non-imported products. so they can get that higher value, but in fact, it's the inferior product that potentially is tainted, since we don't know. But so it's complicated. I'm not here to talk really deep about blockchain, but just to say that this is a tool for the future. This technology has been used for years. It's already built. They use it for tires, for organs, for coffee, to track, make sure it's from fair trade and workforce travesties aren't occurring. IUU fishing is something that I feel very passionate about. And, you know, that's kind of one of the initial reasons I got into seafood, was when I learned that there was slave labor and that we were importing 91%. And so there was a good chance that that shrimp I was eating was a product of this slave labor, and I didn't want to have it. And so I said, how can I block that out? And I started reading labels and learning. And I think this blockchain tool has the potential to really transform the industry. So I'm excited about that. And anybody who wants to learn more about it, I'd be happy to talk more about it. But I think that really it's about change. And the seafood industry has a desperate need for change. And we need to use these technological tools to help us support the change, whether it's transmitting data from offshore to prove that we're not harming the environment, polluting, there's no escapes, all of that. Whether it's using blockchain to move product more efficiently, help reduce waste and lock out illegal product and prevent or reduce fraud. These tools we have to incorporate. We have to work together. It takes the ultimate collaboration. This isn't something that one of us can go and do on our own. It's just like offshore permitting. You know, you can't go out and farm in the ocean if it wasn't this collaboration of 37 federal and state agencies coming together to say what's important to them, what they need to monitor, what they'd like to see in a benthic study. You know, all of that is collaborative effort. So I'd say, I just want to end with a quote and about change. And Socrates said that the secret of change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So in a call to action, I say, let's focus on building the new. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. That was great. And I love that you ended with that quote. That was beautiful. And we need Manna fish farms here in Cape Cod. I have to tell you that. Yeah. Thank you so much. I've written down a bunch of notes, and I'm going to switch over to Liane and have her give an introduction to herself and her company and how you got where you are, Liane. What interested you and brought you into this field, and then we'll start a roundtable discussion. So Liane, I'll turn over to you. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Judith, for, it's great that there's some familiar faces there, some new faces. It's really nice to check in, especially as we head into the holidays, slide into the holidays, and hope for a better 2023, that's for sure. So thanks for that. I wanted to, I actually came about this, and some of this will be stories that you all have already heard, but I actually came, and I'll go ahead and share a little bit of my screen, and let me know you can see that, right? So I actually kind of fell into this because of my partner. So my background is that of a journalist, and I met my partner because of a promise that he made to his daughter about protecting the environment and specifically the oceans. She basically grew up in his lab, watching him make lots of robots. He has a background in 25 years of robots and another probably 30 years in climate technologies, originally from South Africa. So she grew up with her dad in his lab as he was building robots. And when she learned about the climate crisis, she came home and asked her dad to please make a robot that would, you know, save the seas. And as I said, I met him doing a story on him. So my background is that of a journalist. I covered conflicts most of my life, and then ended up doing this, you know, meeting him. I'm sorry, that dinging is in my ear. I don't know what that is. This must be another window right now. And so when I met him, I was doing the story on him and his inventions, and that led me to, you know, to this technology. When we came to my native, the US, I met him in Israel. He's originally from Cape Town, South Africa. When we came back to my native, we founded Aquaai and decided to focus on one of his technologies, which is the robotic fish, which I'm sure you've known. And I joined him on that promise that he made to his daughter, to save the seas. Now, you all know I don't need to talk too much about the problems out there on all the different use cases. We know that there's a problem in our waterways, whether it's rivers from runoffs from industrial, you know, nutrients that then go into the ocean and have, you know, create algae blooms. There's the issues with, as Donna pointed out, overpopulation, and how are we going to feed the planet with the least carbon footprint and being a great source of protein. There's ports that are becoming forever more and more busier and having issues because the ships are much weightier, so therefore they get stuck in sandbags. So there's pollution issues. There's our corals. You know, there are lots of issues out there that are in waterways that need protecting. So could you see right now what the screen where it has all of the different use cases or areas that we were focusing on when we decided to create our technology, which, you know, comes from corals, as I mentioned, you know, obviously aquaculture, even underwater construction, or when you're looking at creating concrete protections and stimulating more and more coral growth, to ghost nets that need to be found in waterways, and as I already mentioned, into rivers. So the screen that you're looking at here is kind of what we put together in all the different use cases of our technology. Some of the icons there are, you know, LOIs, as well as customers that we already have in the north of Norway in sustainable aquaculture and research institutes. And so we really looked at the problem and said, okay, what is, you know we need to protect our water. Water is life, but how do we best do that? And you can't manage what you can't measure. So our goal was to be able to measure, you know, the issue, you know, the water quality, the habitat. But then again, every system out there really was very, very expensive because they were created when we're talking about underwater autonomous underwater vehicles. They were created primarily for defense and oil and gas industries. These are two industries that we do not work with. And we, you know, because those industries have incredibly deep pockets, a lot of the AUVs out there are targeting those industries, and our, you know, R&D and whatnot costs a lot. So we really wanted to be able to create a system that was affordable for the blue economy for other industries other than military or defense or oil and gas. And so it was kind of like, you know, as Judith mentioned, we wanted to be the tractor or the John Deere tool for anyone working in the waterways. And that meant affordability, that meant reliability, and that meant ease of use, as well as ease of transport and so forth. And with that is, you know, what we came up with in terms of, you know, I'm sure you've heard of the, you know, the robotic fish. So that's where the robotic fish comes in, which I think you can see at this point. And we built it really with the end user in mind. And that meant, as I mentioned, all those things, affordability and biomimicry. Now, why biomimicry? It wasn't that because we wanted to have a cute little fish. But if you look at robotics and the future of robotics, it's all turning into biomimicry, whether you're using, you know, bees, you know, to fly and to spy, or whether you're using other systems, you know, that I'm sure you've all seen the walking dog that Boston Dynamics puts out. So in robotics in general, as we go forward, are becoming more and more biomimetic or bio-inspired, and all engineers look at nature for inspiration when creating robots. What that means for, you know, the robot, you know, for our industry, the economy, is that we use the inertia of the or the indonation of the tail that helps us save considerably on battery power and consumption, and plus we are immersing naturally with the natural habitat, which is really great for data acquisition, and we go slow as you need for when you're harnessing data. And as you can see in the picture, you know, this one, the latest model is untethered. It has all the, you know, 3 cameras, side scanner, you know, 3, 4, 5G capabilities, you know, sonar, you know, and of course the different environmental probes that we need. It has the capacity to hold up to about 16 different sensors, all plug and play. And then the information, as you see in the lower screen, is going onto a dashboard that you log into. This particular dashboard is targeting the use case of sustainable aquaculture. These are little cages from an aerial view. And why sustainable aquaculture? Because that's our entry market. That's where we've been operating and testing, I should say, where our first customers come. I mentioned Aquaai. So Aquaai in the north of Norway, in the Arctic Circle. We trialed first to see if we would scare their salmon. We didn't scare the salmon, and then we moved to the island and spent a couple of months 3D and SLS printing our robots. They're all 3D printed, which is really great for quick assembly and, again, affordability. And they're recyclable, about 90% recyclable as well. So that, again, it helps keep the cost down and is also good for the environment in that sense. So after, you know, spending 2 months with Aquaai and understanding what aquaculture, I mean, I didn't have a background in aquaculture, let alone robotics, to be honest, but I did have a background in running the largest production company in New York City at one point in time. So I did come with some business acumen, a little bit different from robotics, but a lot of being a journalist and running the journalism can translate over in terms of access and chutzpah and whatever you need to be a founder. So we've been working with Aquaai, and that, again, just came about the chutzpah of sending a 30-second clip to them and saying, hey, you know, this is what we're making, robot fish to monitor live fish. That's a good story. And so we went, and then they loved it, and then they invested in us, and we've been testing different units. We've had about 9 prototypes to date in total. Each time getting better and better at our offering and our technology and reliability and so forth. And then as of where we are now is we just finished up about I think it was a 3-month program that we did with NEOM. NEOM is part of the Red Sea Development Program. On the Red Sea, obviously, as a Red Sea development problem, it's the largest development project right now. It's like $5 billion. It's off the coast of Saudi Arabia, just south of Jordan. So if any of you were at COP27, you know, it's right kind of kidding across from where Egypt. And they're building the future city. A big part of the future city is feeding that future city and all sustainable tourism and whatnot. So we just did 3 months with them in Deloitte, and it was a really great program. I'm told we were the only offshore technology company for aquaculture selected. I mean, I know we were the only one in the program, but out of quite a few who wanted to do that. And it was because of the future approach of our technology, the robotic and the deep tech approach. So that was really great validation for us, because I'm sure, as you know, especially as startups out there, you're knocking on a lot of doors. People don't get it, or they're, oh, you're too ahead of your market. But it's really wonderful when you're having a conversation with somebody and they totally get it. They see that autonomous systems are the future. We can't sustain the way we're farming now, and this helps, create more and more sustainable farming. And as we grow, it gives also an affordable tool globally for other farms who want to adopt to sustainable measures as they, you know, to remain relevant on a global market. Let's, you know, so that was really great, a really great program for us. It means also really quick growth. We're setting up trials with them, which will be extensive trials, and once that happens, and we'll be scaling significantly in that region. They're putting in their goal is to farm 300,000 tons of finfish by 2030. So, you know, that's pretty good for us if they're putting all those cages. A big chunk of them are offshore cages. So they anticipate the need for about 1,500 cages to reach those goals. And then of course there's some other types of seaweed farming that they're doing. I think the total is 600,000, but then there's shrimp and clams and whatnot, or oyster, shellfish, sorry. So that's kind of one of our latest new excitements for us. We also have, apropos Anne in seaweed, we spent some time in the south of France at Algolesco farm, and really love what they're doing there, and are also talking with them about setting up trials. So we have quite a bit of inbound, not only from seaweed or mariculture, but also from other use cases, whether that's with the European Space Agency on some projects that we're doing or setting up to do. And you know, like I mentioned, as you saw in the LOIs, a lot of different use cases. I have no shortage of inbound requests. That's the beautiful thing. So again, as a startup, when you're hitting all those blocks and all those walls and all those VCs or whatever who don't get it, you know, just try to balance yourself out with customers, because every week I get a new customer. I got from the UAE last week. This week, just yesterday, where was, I don't think I know where that one was from. It was just, I want on my website, I want to use your drone. How much is it? So that's really great, you know, and I do balance that out, because the ups and downs of being a founder in any industry, you know, can be tormenting at times. So if you know your customers want it and people are coming at you, it doesn't really matter what I call the money people say, because they're always the last to know anyway. They certainly were the last on air drones to invest in the air drones that are now taking over the, you know, entire agriculture market. I know that from a good source. One of our board members owns the second largest farm in the US, and he said the only air drones could only get funding from farmers in the beginning days. So that's Aquaai, that's where we are. What else? We are actually, Peter, I think you said you were in Thailand. We're actually heading over there in a few weeks. We have some of our investors there, and we are obviously currently fundraising. So I think it's obvious, because as a startup in the aquaculture space, it seems like you're always fundraising. So we're fundraising we have purchase orders for like $1.5 million, and we need to build, and there's the hardware angle, and we need to and we need to grow the team. So we're fundraising, and I have some of my existing investors over there in Bangkok and Singapore who said, come over to Asia, because the US seems to be a little wallet shut right now for fear of a looming recession. So capital is flowing in other parts of the world. And, you know, we went to Norway because that's where our customers were. We're originally a Silicon Valley startup founded overlooking the Monterey Bay, and opened up our subsidiary in operations in Norway in 2019, because that's where our customers were. So you go where your customers are, you go where the money takes you, and we're incredibly agile in that sense, our team, very international. So we are looking now, to raise the capital so that we can do these trials, so that we're on target for a 9 million in revenue by 2014. So that's kind of full circle on Aquaai, and I'll stop there.
Thank you, Liana. Those are both great updates, really. Yeah. I think 22's been a pretty good year for you guys. Okay, that's exciting. So I have a few questions that I want to throw out there, And then traditionally what we do is we let the startups ask the first questions that are part of the Blue Incubator. And then we open it up for all the audience to ask questions if they'd like. Okay, so we'll just get this question out of the way. As women, are there any particular challenges that you've had in BlueTech as a female? And if you could share some, if there was an experience, how did you handle it? Just for, you know, word on that. Donnie? It doesn't mean that you have had challenges as a female. I want to get that question out of the way.
Oh, there are definitely challenges as a female CEO, as a female CEO in any field. I think there are challenges. So, you know, inequality is certainly and garnering respect seems to take a little more effort. Interesting, you know, if some of my male partners might be with me, I find that male presenters prefer to present and focus on them, and they won't, you know, it's just some subtle things that happen as a woman in business. So I think that BlueTech isn't any different than any other industry, and we have to do what we have to do. You know, aquaculture is interesting as a, you know, it's 75%, I think, of the workers in aquaculture are actually women. But once things get taken off and all the top positions are actually garnered by the men, whether it starts that way or it segues that way as the businesses develop. But so the women who play such a big role are often invisible within aquaculture. So it's just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's funny because, you know, I didn't come from a business background. You know, as I said before, I was a journalist and I covered conflicts and disasters. And I never, and, you know, spent many nights in confined quarters filled with men and or in, you know, such scenarios that are not safe, let's just say, in those, you know, covering conflicts. But I never felt any different. I didn't feel any gender, you know, issues in that industry. And when I went over into business, I was actually a little surprised. Now, you know, a little bit of background. I kind of come at this a little naive. Was raised by my dad and I have 3 brothers. So I'm always around men. I'm very comfortable with men. I actually really never knew what to do with women. So, and in terms, you know, I'll be the one who's hanging at the bar with the guys talking, you know, and could always relate. And it's, I think, because you know, of the way I was raised. But I do notice in business now, and again, you know, I can't say, well, it's because it's the BlueTech, or I wouldn't know if it's any different in any other. But I do find, and it could also be, I think there's something that we don't talk enough about, and that's ageism. Now, I do believe really that if I were at me at 30 or even 40, I probably would have a much easier time closing financing than I do where I am at my age. And that is where men who are older have no issues raising like women who are older. And it's the women who are younger, hotties or whatnot, who can raise. And we all know that it's an issue raising capital with women across the board, but then you have to look at which women are getting. Chances are that it's not older women. So that is, I think, I just wanted to stress out that point. How do I handle it? I think I just, you know, I'm not a very, you can read my face, and I'm not very good at hiding how I think or how I feel. So I gave up a long time ago trying. So I pretty much just say what I think. And some, you know, some people who have men, if we're talking about the opposite sex, how do we handle that? Yes, do they talk to my partner and at him when he's actually the expert in technology, but certainly not in business. and they'll look at him and talk to him about the business, and then he'll just kind of look at me and, you know, can you answer that? As I do with some of the technology too. So I do think that that is, it's an unfortunate, you know, truth out there. I also, because I was raised, I was never one of these women who were always out there going, you know, we got to stick together, because I didn't notice it. I mean, I was a single mom at 20 before Murphy Brown and Madonna made it hip. You know, I just did my life and forged forward, and that was it. You know, there was no stopping. I didn't, you know, so I do see though with that now, but I have to say, I have to call out women too. Because I send out a lot of cold emails as a journalist. I have no hesitancy, and I will send out many cold emails. 90% of the men will write me back, or connect with me on LinkedIn, or however my approach is. And by the way, yes, it works for me. That's how I've gotten a lot of investments. But women will not. And I think that if we want to start saying, oh, well, it should be more fair, you know, for women, we also need to treat each other better, and we should respond. And we don't need to necessarily only invest in packs. If I, you know, ever am that point of success where I'm making investments in other companies, I'm going to be that one kind of angel who doesn't need to join a bunch of women and talk about what my investment should be. And I'm going to be a super angel that'll invest because I want to, and I'm going to return an email. Even now I have something called Follow-Up Friday, where I try to return all the emails or all the requests, because, you know, we're all there and we've all been there, and it's, you know, it does take a village, and the ocean and the water is big enough that there's really no competition if we all really want to like grow or feed the planet or help the planet. So I don't prescribe to that kind of, you know, I guess inclusion. I mean, I do prescribe to inclusion, and I think we should all help each other, but I really believe that women should be better at helping each other as well. And they should also respond to emails and to requests, and be less, I guess, cliquey. So, you know, but that being said, there is an issue with, you know, certainly receiving funding, as we all know.
Thank you. And as someone who's stopped dyeing her hair and is a certain age, it's even harder. I'll just say that. Thank you both for just being straightforward about your thoughts on that. And I've had the same experience with women on LinkedIn too, Liane. It's interesting. Yeah. As our former Secretary of State said, there's a special place in hell for women who do not support women. So let's just talk for a second about funding, right? And climate health and what came out of COP27. And do you both see changes on the horizon? You think this recession is just gonna stop everything, particularly around BlueTech and startups? Is this, there was a lot of hype, I would say that, but is it just for, you know, TRL9 kind of startups, or is there an opportunity for those that are in the early stages, past prototype, maybe early seed money, to be part of this growing movement to address climate issues?
So there definitely is a lot of movement right now in that space, and a lot of talk about what needs to be done, and funding, and where funding can be found, and you know, getting it into the bank, it's another story, right? You can talk, but I'm hoping, you know, taking a positive perspective, that there is a shift, that we're right at the beginning of here, where there'll be a bulk of funding, even though the statistics I read say that there's been less than, there's still more talk, but for 2022 less. So I think this movement forward to, yeah, they're more funding to do this versus maybe you could pick it up, Liane.
Sure. Okay. A couple things. One, if you look at there, yes, there's a lot of noise, a lot of talk, and I actually was commenting on that. I was on a Planeteers panel in Portugal around in November, November, and pointed out that where the problem isn't so much in the early stage, because there are now so many accelerators out there in the BlueTech. We don't need any more accelerators out there in the BlueTech. It's easier to get your $25,000 check or whatever if you're an accelerator, which some take and some don't take equity for. Where it's difficult is where you already have a proven product and you have initial customers and you have, like, even us that have purchase orders. It's that next phase, because if you go out there and you want to deliver, I have almost 50 robots ordered, and I need to build them, and I'm hardware and software, and to get the capital for that, deep tech is very challenging. I mean, I think if you have, a farm, you're putting together a large infrastructure, energy project, I think where it's much larger in terms of capital intensive, and you can go out and get, maybe, some of these large funds that make that to grow. But when you're in deep tech, in deep tech and water, no less, it's more difficult. So funds will either say to you, come back after you deliver, or you're too early for us, but what do I need? I don't need you after I deliver. I have the revenue, I have enough margin, I can just continue off my revenue. or you're too expensive if for some of the early stage groups. And let's face it, all of the early stage funds out there are kind of financed by 3 or 4 families, and they have all their pockets in all these funds. So unless one of those families, through some of their other ways of investing, have invested in you, that most of those other funds are just followers. They're not leaders. I think what we really need, again, are leaders in the industry. We got enough accelerators, like I said, and we got everyone running around saying kumbaya, let's save the planet, but we don't have anybody really kind of meaning business and in putting those first monies in. And because a lot of those funds, they're more interested in protecting their LPs, one of those 3 or 4 families that invested in their fund, than they are in your technology or even in their cause. They want to make sure that their LPs are going to fund them again. So they're incredibly risk averse. But isn't the whole point about, especially climate tech, especially in the blue economy, we have more risk there. And there's also the risk if we don't do what we need to do in terms of protecting the waterways or feeding the planet. So for me, I get annoyed. I mean, again, I'm 8 years doing this. So I get annoyed with all of the funds who claim they want to, climate funds, and they are, but those fund managers are really, really wanting to make sure that they're going to have their funds financed for the next year more than they are making certain the technologies are invested in. And this is where I did a call out for philanthropists to maybe look at where their dollars are actually going toward, because we do need to have more dollars going towards the deeper tech and some of these more risky projects. And most of the time, the philanthropists also are the ones who are, at least the ones who are self-made, understand risk. But if you're just a fund manager and you're managing other people's money, then you're just protecting that. So that's one of the issues. And what's happening now, I can tell you right now, venture capitalist wallets are closed. Everyone is waiting about the looming recession. Nobody, there aren't going to be a lot of deals going down in the first quarter, I don't think. I wish it were different. And we are in a bear market. So my strategy has been going to family offices or high net worth individuals, as opposed to trying to knock on the doors of VCs, because they're just protecting their LPs, their fund. their existing investments that they need to keep afloat. So, you know, it's harder to get funded more than ever right now. And I think that will continue certainly until at least, you know, certainly past January. And again, this is primarily in the US, and Europe usually follows also. Europe, as you well know, has lower valuations typically than the US. And I think where there is capital is in MENA in Asia. I think innovation is booming. And anyway, I think innovation is much, you know, is just going really fast over in Asia, and there's funding for it. So when I mentioned to you that gap, this is where, at least in the US, you know, you look at historically, even other, you know, the battery, different technologies that started out really great and then couldn't get the funding and ended up getting funding, you know, from Asia or China. And that's where they had to scale. And we've lost a lot of technology that way because the US traditionally doesn't want to fund that gap area. They will fund if you already have the ROI, if you already have tons of revenue going, I mean, but, or if you're an idea on a napkin and, you know, they want to throw some change at you, you know, for their through their accelerator. So this is where I think we need to wake up, and certainly in every industry, but especially in the blue economy. And it would be nice to see more and more people, you know, we have a lot of climate noise out there, but I don't know if you follow, there's a great newsletter out there. So Deals of the Week, Climate Deals of the Week. So there was maybe $400 million in deals that went down a couple of weeks ago. And I was so like already feeling like crap because I wasn't going to me, right? So I went and I looked at all the companies, who's financing them. And there wasn't a single water company that got financed. In like $400 million of financing that went out on Deals of the Week. Not one water company. We can bee pollination, you know, forest fire prevention, you name it. Not one water company or aquaculture, nothing to do with the water, nada. So I was just like, wow. So I had a conversation with somebody who is pretty active, Taj Eldred's, in the climate space. And I said, what's going on? He said, yeah, people don't understand water. You know, how are we going to get more people to engage and understand? And I have a whole pamphlet, I mean, a whole drive, you know, Google Drive of reports and you know, that I just give the link to. So anyone who wants to learn about the space can, but we need more people engaged in the space. Because, you know, as I said before, water is life. So why is it that hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars are going to carbon or to all these other things, which are important, but not one water company? So, yeah, I don't know how to fix it, but we certainly need to do more to get more of those climate investors into, you know, water climate investors.
Totally agree. I'm gonna check out that newsletter. Thank you. Donna, do you want to add anything on that? Or that was great, Liana. Thank you. It's that gap. And the US government came out yesterday. But they are, I can't think of the number, but it's one of the largest investments they've made, and it's going to be in battery. There's going to be 3 locations. Yeah, it's like about time, right? Yeah.
I have nothing to add. That was great, Liana.
Great, thank you. So going back to water and offshore projects, I'm curious about the relationships. I mean, do you see, Donna, that it's possible to have fish farms mixed in with the offshore wind? Is that, I mean, I know it's a dialogue that's been happening in many, many states, but in your dialogues with the policymakers, with those, is it 37 different organizations? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. Right now, there's a project down in the South in the Gulf to utilize platforms that are no longer being used for wind. That's a little easier. When I first started, the first thing I did was ran to deep water wind and said, hey, I want to permit offshore aquaculture maybe. And I remember my town supervisor called them on the phone and said, oh, I want to introduce you to Donna, and she wants to, maybe she could put a pod in between your turbines. And they said, oh, that sounds like a great idea, but we're permitting ourselves and it's so complicated that we just have to get our permits first and, you know, come back to us later on. And I think that that's the problem is the permitting process is so unclear and takes so long, certainly with aquaculture, to co-locate it is difficult. And we're kind of working through some of that in permitting, trying to permit with the wave energy at the same time. And we've, what we're doing is we're proceeding side by side instead of together. This way, you know, we go forward with our permit, and depending on what we find, if we can go together this way, resources aren't wasted, and it's kind of a shared experience. But the same thing could be done with wind, but I think it's just harder to wrap your mind around doing both at the same time, because wind is such a big scale. It's not done on a small scale, but perhaps floating wind on a smaller scale to power might be able to demonstrate this, you know, joint permitting process. But it's definitely a challenge. It seems like it would work well together, but everyone's so concerned, and rightfully so. They want to know exactly what the impacts are from what you're doing, right? If you start co-locating, you can't get a clear read on whether it's aquaculture or wind, the equipment that's causing, is it the heat, you know? So this way, once we get both going clearly and sustainably, I think we can see about, you know, moving together. But it's going to be a while, I think, on that one.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking that here in Massachusetts, for example, the wind farms that are going up, it's going to take 15 years before they're physically built. So in the meantime, there's leased land, leased water area that could at least be large pilots, for lack of another word, right? I don't know, just an idea. So why don't we open up to the startups that are in? We'll go around first. Start. Anne, you had your hand up.
I did. It was very pertinent in that we're just undertaking a piece of work, Donna, with a catapult in the UK. The towable farm that we have, of course, opens up a lot of potential. And in Denmark, they've made it part of the licensing process that they will only issue licenses when they co-locate with seaweed farming for the CO2 benefits. So picking up on that subject of CO2 and looking at the water quality as well. But the piece of work we're doing is looking at the issues technically from a practical point of view, policy with a large P, political, and policy about health, safety, regulation, and regulatory issues around co-location. So we're looking at a number of ways of reasons why it wouldn't work. Then we're tackling it from the point of view of, if it is going to work, what is it going to look like? How do we actually deliver on that? So that might be an interesting sort of conversation to have further down the line. Those questions are being asked of different agencies as we speak. So I think by June, we should have some conclusive report on those areas.
And a question following up on that for both of you. So I know the US were clearly time-wise behind different areas. And Christine, maybe you can talk a little bit about Canada as well. So if you're trying to set up something here in the US, can you use data from other farms around the world Donna, or is it restricted? Liane, when your projects are being priced out, can you do the same thing? Can you use international examples, or do you need to stick within the same regulatory geography when you're doing proposals, for example?
We use the data from Canada. You know, our COO shared all of his records and numbers, and we can then say, okay, what's going to be different offshore, you know, which is a lot. And how is that going to affect our feed conversion ratios as we move? What's the pricing differential, you know, from one space to the other? But you gotta, with no industry standard to point to or start from, we have to start somewhere, right? I look at farms operating outside of North America, you know, to see their numbers. Anyone who would share numbers with me, we learn from them and, you know, extrapolate them into our projections.
So when you're talking about, you know, regulatory issues, I guess, for us, it's really just about Wi-Fi. So we have to always make certain that we're operating within. So one of the reasons why we have different pods, subs, is that we build in country, and, you know, a lot of the stuff is off the shelf. So certainly everything that has to do with communication is from in country, so that we are falling in compliance with that countries, because different countries, you can't use certain Wi-Fi's with a different country, you know, for reasons, whether it's security or whatnot. So, and in terms of the data, all the information goes to our back end, so we own it, and we are just, I don't think we have anything that, you know, we're able to share, you know, temperature with like climate change, you know, divisions and stuff that are monitoring climate shifts in the waterways. So it's not prohibitory in that sense.
Yeah, Fernando put a question in the chat. Is the US pretty open about grants in this space? Donna, for finfish?
Pretty open. There's so many opportunities for grants across the board, federal, state, regional, sea grant stuff. I mean, there's a lot. I think that we really need to build some support for startups that want to do grants, because it's not as easy as we might talk about and make it sound. I mean, these documents, just the technological challenges for someone who might not understand how to go on grants.gov and create a profile, or, you know, how to do the tech pieces and the budgeting. It's not easy. I think that there's a great opportunity for grants to help grants. Grants to help grant writers. That would be, you know, really go a long way. But yeah, there's great opportunities, even state grants. Manna received a series of state funding, but they're different types of grants, right? These particular grants that we received from New York State were 20% capital match grants. So when we buy our first piece of equipment, we'll get 20% back by cashing in on that grant. And then there's match grants, travel grants. There are, you know, no match grants. That's what you want to look for, those good no match grants. And we haven't gotten any of those, but they're there. And I think there's a pretty active opportunity area for this in the US.
I'm actually just writing in for everybody. There is actually, Donna, somebody I know who has a startup. It's called Open Grants, and they match you with grants. And I don't know if they actually do the grant proposal or not, but I know they are matching you with different grants, and they must have some, they must do the proposals too. So Open Grants is that .com. There you go. So Dale Chubovsky is the founder and whom I know from Boost VC. We both got investments from Adam Draper and Boost VC, and that's how I met him. And I think he's been doing really well. So check that out for the US anyway. I don't think he's international yet. And of course, there's the US grants, and then of course everyone knows the EIC accelerator grants in Europe, and Blue Invest and all those grants if you're in Europe based. So I hopefully that's helpful. We personally have never applied to any US. Wait, I take that back. Early on, we did apply to an SBIR for an aquaculture technology. We didn't get it. So I think a lot of, even though I was told from some of the people at SBIR to please apply to this grant, so we took it. It's very time consuming, and you have to maneuver how to figure it out, and then you have to be on this portal, on that portal, on this portal. I mean, it's a full-time job in and of itself just to maneuver the grant world. So I actually thought, because they had said, hey, you should apply to this, you guys have a really great chance. And okay, so I put the effort in, paid someone to help me do it too, and grant writer, and didn't get the grant, and realized, okay, this is, you really have to know somebody in some of these things. And then another, in terms of Europe, we did apply through our Norwegian entity for an EIC grant, which are also incredibly extensive. We never received the grant. We did receive the seal of excellence for quality, efficiency, and such, but never actually got the money. But that too, that is an industry. And I know in Europe, most of the people who help you write the grants take anywhere between 7 to 15% of your grant just to help you get the grant. And then there's the nightmare of the auditing, through how the money is spent, the entire process. And I've been told by some people who did get grants are like, never again, just because of how laborious it is from the backside of accounting, and obviously the front side. But hey, to each his own. It is not, it doesn't take equity. It's just a matter of man hours and I guess time dedicated to that. But because we have a dual use system, we don't really apply anymore for US grants for our technology.
Thank you. Yeah.
If someone, I just add, if someone was looking for funding, I suggest you develop your relationships with your university partners or collaborators. A lot of times they'll go forward with the grant and the grant writing, and you're an industry partner. So you get to learn from it and benefit from it partially. So we, with the University of Southern Mississippi, that's the format we used for some of the Gulf work. And it was the university that went forward and did the grant writing. And we did get a few of those, and it has helped us develop our offshore site. Thank you, Dr. Kelly Lucas. Wonderful woman, supporting all entrepreneurs.
Peter or Christine, do you have a specific question?
I've got a question, yes, in relation to the points that were raised earlier about co-location, etc. I was thinking about the issue, especially with Donna and some of the work you're doing in new areas. How you go about with conducting an environmental impact assessment. I'm interested to understand what the approach there is, because of course, especially in a new area, how you would actually think about filling out the assessment in advance for funding request or even permit requirements.
So the EIS, there's an EA or EIS, and really you don't get told by the government whether they want the EA or the EIS. I mean, for us, we just assumed early on we were going to have to do an EIS. The EIS is, so there's two things, right? There's the marine spatial planning work to get all that, to study where to be. And then you put your application in, a full app, which we did for Florida in May. Then the government comes together, the agencies come together and get on the same page as to what that EIS should look like. And this is taken from May. We're almost there now. And then they would start the EIS work. You would engage an outside company to perform the work. It's between $1 million and $1.5 million, can take up to 2 years. It's daunting. That's really what I have to say about it right now.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And I've got a question for Liane in terms of, I think the challenge for any early stage startup is always about scaling and how you can attract funding to actually get to the point where you can scale to actually afford to build 50 robots that you've got orders for. I mean, what is the, I guess that's the challenge that I'm trying to understand here. How do you go about putting together a funding proposal which kind of shows that you've got a ROI that's going to be attractive for an investor to fund the building of 50 robots, robotic fishers? That's I was thinking about that. I was thinking, how do you calculate the ROI for that?
Well, I think it's more about scalability, like you said. So our approach is that, we have the history, we've proven the product, we've proven the business model, we have customers, we have a constant flow of inbound requests, and we're at what they call in the startup world the valley of death, where you're kind of off the ground flying, but you're not, and you're over, let's say we'll use the water, over the ocean, but you have to, when you deliver is when you land on the other side to another piece of land, and you need to, get over that. So that's what they call the valley of death. I'm sure you've heard it. So, I mean, our margins are quite nice. So I'm raising, about the same amount that I'll get in revenue. So it's not so much. We're kind of we've done a really good job of being capital efficient and can more or less not bootstrapping completely, but we've been able to go incredibly far on very minor investments, but mostly by paid trials. So our customers have been our largest financier of the company, hands down, either through prepayments or paid trials or customer investments. That's where we've been able to be successful the most. Where we had absolutely zero success are angel groups. I don't even approach them. And you kind of over time start to, I think what's really important to do is start to understand the profile of those who do invest in you. So if I'm going to profile the type of investors we've received so far, whether they're angels or even funds that have invested in us, they are unique. They're not your typical fund. They're not they've really been people who have lived themselves adventurous lifestyles, not just adventurous in spreadsheets, but physically adventurous, and understand the meaning of ups and downs. So I think one thing that is important to do as a startup is to kind of look and see, well, what are the types of people, and try to target those. explaining the, just to answer you back, explaining the ROI, we've always raised right now and continue to on debt. So we're not putting, value on it, but of course the value is going to shoot higher. So their ROI, I can't say exactly, but will be much, will be significant because the next valuation will be much higher than we are today post delivery of the units. So that's the goal.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Christine, do you have any questions?
No, I have no questions. I
Or
guess
comments?
to me, the only comment that I have is for people applying for grants. Like there's a couple that I've applied for that are like these international competitions for BlueTech or whatever it is. And you have to submit a video, and I can see that nobody ever watched the video. And I was still rejected. So I stopped applying. Like I figure the way I see it is that these groups, they've already decided exactly who they're going to fund, and they just have a competition to raise awareness so that they can say, we funded these top companies out of 300 others that applied. So I don't even look at any of them anymore, to be honest. But I have a little bit of like, I guess, a privileged place where I can self-fund. So, but yeah, so those things, as soon as I started to see that, I was like, oh, this doesn't appeal to me at all. And I don't want to wear that. So
Can I comment on that?
yeah.
You're absolutely right. It's a crapshoot as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I'll find out that we actually were finalists in things that I don't think I ever applied for. And are you coming to Davos? You're on the whatever, I was like, no, I'm not coming to Davos, and I didn't know this existed. But then there's so many things out there and so many challenges, and I think it's great if you win, of course, and there's that part of you as a startup founder is like, oh, what, that 1% chance that I get in. But Christine's right. It's really a crapshoot on who gets in, and I think it's the same for the grants as well. I do. We twice in a row made it past the first phase. This is the EIC grant. Got to the second, which required 3 of 3 yeses, and so 2 people both times said yes, and 1 person said no. So because 1 person maybe had a bad day or didn't believe in it, or it'll never work in aqua, whatever reason, without a conversation, just through the documentation, which again is like sometimes 99 pages of documentation for those EIC grants, but you just go, well, that okay. So I do agree with you, Christine, and I also think that anyone who's a founder, never pay to pitch. Never, ever pay to pitch. Never pay for any of these challenges. I think that's ridiculous. And if you're spending money on, we were asked to be a part of, what was it? The World Ocean Council was putting together all these videos of ocean, what was it, not warriors, but it was a documentary series on Reuters.
Ocean Titans.
And they called me up and said, oh, we're gonna start this series. You're gonna Ocean Titan. We really want you to be a part of it. And I was like, okay, great. 1 conversation. Second conversation, okay. And they said, yeah, it's only gonna cost you like $25,000. And I was like, first of all, I come from production. And if you're going to charge me $25,000 that I know I can do in like 2, no way. And why is it $25,000? And how dare you charge me a startup so that I'm giving you content for your series? And then it gets populated, either from the World Ocean Council or the groups that, retweet and reshare this great new series of these, innovatives. No. These are people who agreed to pay $25,000 and have the marketing budget, which if you're a startup, your budget is going towards either survival or your product. And it should be a trial before you need marketing, So I think there's so much noise and there's so much to dodge that, when I started out, I was, every conference, everything I had to, now I'm very selective where I give my time, and it's time. And I think that's the, just ignore the noise, put your blinders on and go for your target. And yeah, don't waste the time on all these challenges or in these, shows or these false, what I call, as a journalist, I get really antagonistic about it when I talk to them, and I say, this, I don't pay for media. You shouldn't pay for media.
Well, I mean, so that kind of goes back to your an earlier comment, I think, where you said, essentially like targeting women for not responding to you, but we get our red flags are really high. Like the number of predatory emails I get, either for joining conferences or to talk to somebody or to do something, is essentially volunteering my time that I have 5 hours between the time I drop my kids off and pick them up. And so for me, like, unless it's something that I really want to talk about, I'm not really, I very rarely have the chance to respond. And so I have to pick and choose what I'm doing. So it's, I guess, give us a little bit of leeway than when we're already volunteering and very short timed.
That's so true. Thanks for joining us today, Christine. We appreciate your time. I think,
and I've got to go run and get my kids. I'm 1 minute late. So
crowdfunding is also something we might want to kick around a little bit for consideration. Well, first, Liana, I would like to know why they were charging me 50,000 and you 25. So that's interesting, but not interested in that either. And full disclosure, I am on the board of the World Ocean Council. So there came whatever. In any event, I'm sure they mean well. It's just maybe not laid out in the best way. But I was also approached by a television show called The Next Unicorn. I don't know if anybody's heard of this. Not that I would have to pay, and it's a great opportunity. It's just a little premature for us right now. But it's, you go on the show, it's like a contestant, and audience members can invest in your company fractionally. And what I thought was that if you ever did go public one day, that would be a real nightmare for well, maybe not, I don't know, but for reporting, right? But it's something to be mentioned if you haven't heard of it. Crowdfunding or decentralized finance, whatever they're talking about there, seems like it could have potential to bridge that gap. I agree with what everyone's saying. There's money missing from prototype to fully scaled up. There's just no funding for in the middle. There are all these incubators, all these accelerators, and that's not what's needed. We need scale up money.
to be on the other side though of that comment is, would you do it? So like I hear that often, but if it was my money and if it's high risk, you don't know if people can execute, and a lot of times I see people, especially bootstrappers like myself, and also particularly women, that want to hold back more of the control in their company. They're not willing to give as much away. And so they're being more conservative, which means you're sort of feeding in. That's not the goal of a VC. That's not the goal. They want a 5-year exit. And so if I go and I say, I don't want to exit my company, they're not going to touch me. So I've not even thought about that. So I think it's important to think about what is the role of funding? It's not to fund my vision of the world. It's not to fund what I want to do for my job. Their role is to make money for their share, their group or themselves. So that's, yeah. So anyway, that's just my thought on that.
I agree. That's where they should invest in the older CEOs that are ready to retire.
So that is another point that, when I was younger, it wasn't that long ago, but I remember going to a conference, like a pitch competition, and the number of people that asked me, how old are you? I couldn't believe it because they thought I was too young to be as a female. So I kind of see it opposite, that as a female, it doesn't pay to be young they don't want to see you young. They want to see you have wisdom. To be young and a guy, that's where they would have more. So I actually feel well positioned in my age because I have 25 years of ocean research behind me, that I have the credentials, that I have all this behind me, that now that I feel like I have the trust, but that comes with a lot of years of work and execution. So I don't know, but that's just how I see it.
Thanks, Christine. Let's see.
Oh, I will add one more thing.
Yeah.
And that's that I often get, my irritation is that I often get invited to talk about women in, so like these two here, invited to talk about women in STEM, women in tech, women in business, women in startups, women in the blue economy. And I usually say no, because that's not my expertise. So for myself, I got caught off guard. The Minister of Fisheries and Oceans 2 years ago invited me to talk about the blue economy. And then I came, and it was only about my session. She was meeting with people across the country. My session was only about women in the blue economy. And so for me, that's not what I study. It's not what I'm an expert in, which means I'm providing my own personal experience. And I can't do that, because if I'm providing my own personal lens, then it's identifiable. It can hurt me. So I don't talk about those things. So I'm often when that is something that comes up, I definitely don't talk about it when it's caught off guard. So I prefer to talk about the blue economy, which is something I know about, or STEM in business, not women in.
And this series is not meant to be just about being female in a sector at all. It's to hear the voices, more voices of more women within the blue sector, because we're just not out there in numbers on the panels.
And having a conversation around the barriers and how to overcome them, and to be more like, to identify them so that you can, like, for example, when women are startups, we get women get asked a series of different questions that help de-risk the investment, rather than a male who's pitching gets asked questions about how they're going to grow it faster. So it's totally a different mindset and a series of questions. But there's research behind that. So having so knowing that in advance, then you can steer that conversation if you're ever in that position, so that you're like, it's like you have a tool set that you can use to start to advocate in the direction that you need to go, knowing that those barriers are there. I think it's an important conversation.
And have you, when you're thinking about your pitch decks, have they progressively addressed those as those questions have arisen?
Yeah.
The longer you've been pitching?
It's funny, I haven't pitched now in 5 years. I pitched like a couple times in the first year when I was just trying to figure this out, and
or presentations.
I haven't.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a presentation in February at a marine protected area conference.
Yeah.
So it's going to be still styled in an academic format, like show research, and it's different than these stellar pitch competitions where it's like,
and you're not
5 minutes.
fundraising, which it's
different.
Puts you in a different position.
But I've watched a lot, so I've learned a lot by not pitching myself. It means that I've learned a lot by watching others, and so I think you get a lot more when you're thinking about what others and critiquing or learning from others, rather than being the forest inside it, the tree in the forest.
Yeah. Exactly. Kyla, did you have any particular questions? Are you still there? I know you had to shut off your camera earlier. Or Fernando? Fernando's one of our startups from Brazil. Busy working. Yep. Kyla?
I could definitely ask
Yeah.
several questions.
Great. Can you just introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'll put my camera back on. Hi, everyone. So just briefly about myself, before I do that, I just want to thank everyone for having this space open and available. And although I'm not a current BlueTech startup founder, I have been working in and around the blue economy basically my entire life. And I'm, an educated economist and also a trained, renewable energy data analyst who has already experienced a lot of really unfortunate interactions within the renewable energy industry and economics. And so my question would be, based on where I'm at, and for someone who is navigating, several career pivots on the way towards working in the blue economy with a varied, list of experiences, what would be the best way to network within a community of women founders in the blue economy, folks working in marine sciences, oceanography, and add value to your projects and to different work that you're doing, even though I don't have a singular linear career path with one specialty? So that would be my question.
Anybody
Well,
want
in
to?
terms of networking, I guess being on this call is pretty good. It allows you to, meet. So I'm a part of a couple of groups on Facebook, Women in Tech, Female Founders Unite, which are quite large and global and have been, I don't know, 3,000, but there's some people who are very active. You can just spit out a question if you have it. It is a pretty safe space, and there's some pretty, deep discussions that take place. You can pick and choose. So I really like that for myself, because I'm by character not much of a joiner, I'll be honest. I'm a bit of a loner, and so to be able to go in there and tap in and, put a keyword up and read anything. And if I don't find, then I can ask out. And there's, there's obviously in those things a few women that you kind of naturally migrate toward and kind of, are always around you, even in doing Aquaai over the years. And you see people on talks like this, and you keep in contact, or over the years you're still at it and you develop relationships. I mean, even talking with Donna, I think it was a while before I was so excited to finally be at the same place at the same time or the same town or whatever. And so, you'll see these people who are in your circle as you're going along. And I'm not shy in reaching out either. And that's just segued over from being a journalist. So, I'm very, very forthcoming and on LinkedIn and clicking and using. I always give a message and why I'm clicking on you. So it's not like some random thing, but I would do that. I think there are a couple of other groups for women as well. In the space, Women in Water or something like that. And of course I'm in robotics, so that I have women in robotics. And, I guess it just depends on where your focus is.
I agree that the don't be shy, just reach out strategy is the way to go. I've invited myself into farms all around the world for tours and created, over time, friendships and relationships. And if I have a question, it's like having an advisory board informally where you have these people who are doing it that can help and support you. I think that's the greatest thing. It's kind of a beautiful thing. And I don't think it's a woman male thing necessarily. I recommend the World Ocean Council, even though we just bashed them a little bit, but it's a great place to start in a sense of it's one of the few cross-sectorial organizations focused on corporate social responsibility. So it's a very broad, everybody out in the ocean, energy, kind of a big picture. And actually what happened to me was I did get segued into a women in ocean business or whatever it was, that I didn't know I was on that. I still got to moderate the aquaculture panel, but they all of a sudden added me into this other, and I was not the expert in that at all. And that was a little bit of a challenge, but still powered through. And at these conferences, and I also recommend Aquaculture America, which is a phenomenal annual conference. It's coming up in February. This year it'll be in New Orleans, and it's science-based. It seems like it would fit very well for you. And then, you know, in your networking sessions that are set up within that, attract yourself to the women or approach the women who are on the panels. They're very open after they speak to, you can give them your card, follow up, and start to develop your own relationships that way. I think that's a really good way to go. Good luck.
Is there like I think there's a women in seafood too, if I recall. No, Donna, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
I
didn't mean
think
to
it's
bash. Okay, I didn't mean to bash.
I'm going to tell Paul. Yeah.
I was just like irritated. What? No. Okay. So yeah, world women in seafood, and then there is. I know that there is the women in robotics. There's also a women in deep tech. So again, I don't know. You know, you're an economist, right? Kind of.
Yes, economists amongst other things, but I do have a penchant for, you know, taking a look at economics within the environment and natural resources.
Okay.
Another great group is Stronger America Through Seafood. And there's some wonderful women who are engaged there that I've met as part of that group. You know, they're Washington, D.C. based, focused on the Aqua Act, advancing the quality and understanding of American aquaculture, legislation pending here in the U.S., bipartisan. But I met great women within that organization too. Sometimes they're just side by side with you on a common cause. So that's another. One last I throw up to all of you is I'm on the advisory board of the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Association. Like, you wouldn't have even thought about this, and I don't know how I ended up there, but it's because they didn't know that aquaculture is ag, and it's taken 5 years of pushing that comment with them, where they said, well, then come on, Donna, you be part and help us grow. And if you go to their website, Honor the Harvest, you can see wonderful women who are farming around the US. And also you could endorse the Decade of Ag. And the Decade of Ag vision that was developed by this group is really, it applies to everything that we do. It's a resilient, restorative, economically viable, and climate-smart agricultural system that produces abundant and nutritious food, natural fiber, and clean energy for a sustainable, vibrant, and prosperous America. I mean, who can't get behind that? It's what we need for our future.
Kyla, where are you located?
Thank you for the question, Judith, and thanks everyone for your input. I'm currently located in Canada, and I've been located in Canada my whole life. However, you know, I do visit the US a lot. My mother is American, and I'm also in a situation where I'm ready and willing to be where I need to be, whether that's Canada or not. So I'm more than willing to, you know, change where I live in order to be in the right place for my career and future, and, you know, where I can put in the best value.
But there's isn't Judith, you might know, isn't Sea Head both operational in Canada and the US, or just in northern main area of the US? Sea Head.
I know they're down in Mississippi and in Cambridge and in Providence.
In Massachusetts, North,
In
okay.
Massachusetts.
Up in Canada, there's
they've
the
done
Ocean
joint
Supercluster.
programs In, I'm sorry, they've done joint programs in Maine. And I know they do some things in Halifax at
Yes.
Cove, but I
Okay,
don't think that they're actually physically, I don't think they have a,
they just do things with Cove. Okay.
yeah. Because it's you have to have some
Yeah, yeah.
mutual time and,
Mm.
yeah.
I think they house the Ocean Supercluster up in Halifax. If you're familiar with that.
Are you in Eastern Canada or Western or Central?
I'm currently in Central East. I currently live in Quebec and I'm back and forth from Ottawa, Gatineau, and Toronto, Montreal, that area, landlocked area.
I'll be happy to make some introductions and also to a woman who was on earlier. She's works for the Canadian consulate here in Boston. And yeah, we can help get you networked. And LinkedIn is amazing, I think. I've met so many people across the world and people that, it would be hard to reach them through their offices. I'll say it that way, right? But like Liane said, I always send a note and yeah, be happy to help.
Thank you, Judith. I had actually sent you a note through LinkedIn maybe 10, 15 minutes ago and was planning on doing that with everyone. So it's good to hear you affirm that decision. And I'm really excited to connect with anyone and everyone via this roundtable. Thanks again.
Thank you. And I'll send out in a few days the startups information, contact information, as well as Manna and Donna's, and the link to the video too for everybody that registered. Fernando, it's Women in Tech Day, but you know what? We did not get a chance to hear from you. Do you want to take 2 or 3 minutes quickly and tell us about your startup? I know you had to come in late today, but it's good to see you.
Yeah, sorry, thanks. Well, okay, first of all, don't kill me, right? Because I'm not in the blue economy.
You're in
fact,
water, though. Water is blue.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be ocean.
Yeah, okay. My startup, it's for the mining industry. We developed a new method to recover ultra fine grains of metals that are lost into tailings. This is a huge environmental and, well, social problem because we keep mining the earth while still losing part of it into tailings. So there are billions and billions of dollars worth of metals inside tailings, and there was no technology capable of recovering in an economical way. Now we can do it, but the problem is this also works for mineral separation, let's say prior to tailings, which means the mining companies will have to dump something like $500 million and buy another $500 million in new equipment, which means that there is no C-level willing to do that, or at least to be the first one. So we are struggling to make revenues. But finally we got our first grant. It's not much, very little, but keep us afloat. And now we are talking to some investors, looking forward, and maybe we can move a step forward. And we are now trying to build a pilot plant. If we build a pilot plant that we can show at a reasonable level of working productivity, things like that, scale up from laboratory to a pre-commercial setup, then we can show the mining industry what they are losing and how to recover those billions of dollars, then we are sure that we will go forward. This is us. Brazil, it's challenging, and but this is it. This is doing a startup all over the world is basically the same thing. A lot of tears, a lot of blood, but in the end, something new comes out. We are pushing forward.
Thanks, Fernando. Maybe some social impact funds might, because clearly I don't think the world is giving up their phones, and the only place to get some of those phone pieces are out of the earth, unfortunately. And you know, at least technology like yours is going to reduce the amount of water that's damaged, and give an ROI, except that there is that big gap that's got to be covered. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's moving. It's going forward. That's a good sign.
And congratulations. You've got a little revenue coming in. That's got to make you feel
it was
good.
really good.
Excellent.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It's a step in the right direction, for sure.
Excellent.
Good. Thanks.
Absolutely. Anybody else on the call have a question or a comment? Well, I want to thank both of you and everyone that came in today. I think these conversations are good. I think just raising awareness of the challenges that startups go through at different phases. And I think it's also important sometimes to talk about some of our experiences as women, whether or not they're relevant to somebody else. There's always a takeaway for somebody, right? Sharing your experiences. So I want to wish everybody a nice holiday season, and I think 2023 is going to be a happy blue year. Liana, what do you think? Donna? Happy blue year. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Happy
Thank
Blue
you.
Year,
Thank you so
for
much.
sure.
Thank you. Everybody stay
See you in
safe.
2020.